Your cards, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen and variations thereof, welcome to the Selectives Lorecast, a casual Elder Scrolls podcast. Reg, thanks for the props. My name is Rotten Deadite. With me today are...
My name is James, also known as Aramithius.
This is Jonathan. You can find me as Southus on the interwebs.
And my name is Nick, also known as Reg, various other things. Who cares?
And I'm Andrew, also known as the White Guar.
Today we're talking about Dibella because we're doing it in alphabetical order and she's next.
The order.
Yeah. And before we get started, I actually wanted to just say that I actually did a whole lot of research over this week for Dibella, or Dibella, or however I'm supposed to pronounce her, because I was really interested in looking up what I originally had heard of referred to as what do you call it? Damn, there was a word for it.
Temple prostitution? Or...
Yeah. Religious prostitution or temple prostitution. And I had originally heard about this because I took a course in world literature, and there was the guy had us cover some Mesopotamian mythology. That stuff, and which was a great read, and it involved the Legend of Gilgamesh and some other stuff, and one of the myths involves the taming of a character by sending what appears to be described as a priestess of a temple to teach him the ways of culture and society, and which apparently meant go and sleep with him. And she has sex with him, and this tames him. I'm trying to remember the name of the character because it's... Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
And this was like a huge deal in the for my professor, because he was going on and on about the way that the difference between in Mesopotamian mythology, the difference between an untamed animal and a human being is culture, and so forth. Yeah, Enkidu. And the reason why that was a big deal, and because it was such a big deal, I got really interested in the idea of religious prostitution, and I was like, why? Like, how is that explained within the metaphysical structure of a religion or a philosophy? Like, how does that work exactly? And so I did a whole lot of research this week, and what I discovered was it's all horseshit. Apparently, there's absolutely no evidence supporting any incidents whatsoever of religious prostitution in any culture anywhere in the world. And when you do read something about it, it's either a mistranslation, as it is in the case with Mesopotamian mythology, or a not very nuanced translation, or it's some racist shithead spreading rumors about what he considers to be a corrupt and violent culture, and they're like, yeah, even their priestesses are having sex with dudes. Yeah, it's all crap. So now I don't recall, and it's been probably a year since I last played Skyrim. You can throw stones at me next time you see me in public. What was it ever implied that was what the Cult of Dibella was doing in Skyrim? I don't think it was.
I'm pretty sure that's... I don't know if it's just in Skyrim. I do recall reading a source that if not suggested, it explicitly stated that priestesses are supposed to have sex with the people who come to the temple, because it's a way to commune with the goddess.
Right.
It was absolutely in Daggerfall.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There were naked women in Daggerfall in the Dibella temple.
Naked doesn't necessarily condone prostitution, though. So
right. No, true, but
Mhm.
It was all there, is what I'm saying.
Well, I'm looking at sacred prostitution in the real world here. I've got the Wikipedia article pulled
Yeah.
up. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in here. There's stuff in Japan and India. According to this, I mean, it kind of throws some shades of gray on it a little bit. It has sometimes been claimed that sacred prostitution was once practiced by the Miko within traditional Shinto in Japan.
Yeah, claimed.
Yeah. However, the evidence suggests that their role was that of religious dancers and shamans.
Yeah.
But then I know. I mean, did anyone ever read the Da Vinci Code?
Yes, unfortunately, I labored through that turd.
'Cause I don't know how much of it was based in like the stuff with was it the Knights Templar or whatever.
I think I mentioned. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's a secret society, that's kind of behind the whole thing, and one of the major plot points is that Sophie, one of the main characters, she as a child witnessed her grandfather, who was a grand master of the Priory of Sion, which was this society, effectively having like ritualized sex with some priestess, and there are people standing around doing ritual things, and the Robert Langdon, the main character, he talks about how, well, yeah, this the symbol of sex, this is part of the sacred feminine, and it's tied to the pentagram symbol, because that's that's the shape that Venus traces in the sky, and that's not the other thing. And so I mean, I would say there's probably some. I mean, there's got to be some historical accuracy to the idea that someone did it somewhere.
Well, it's one of the things that Dan Brown likes to do is take very spurious or badly or very very suspicious testimony or records from people who are clearly conflicted or have an agenda, and then or find one mention of it that somebody made somewhere that was then denied by everybody else, but Dan Brown takes that one dude and says, okay, well, this is all the evidence I need. And in the case of, and I'm not saying that Dan Brown is, well, I am saying that Dan Brown cherry picks in order to write a better story. He's absolutely doing that. But and I don't really have a problem with that, except then he turns around and says, well, this is what's actually happening, and I'm telling you, the reader, truth that you won't get anywhere else. That's a problem. But the fact that he'll, but I mean, if you cherry pick testimony and then go, yeah, this is, if you cherry pick evidence and then say, yeah, this isn't what actually happened, but this makes for a better story, then fucking go for it. That's great. But just couch it in fiction. But what the problem with sacred prostitution is that there's a whole lot of metaphysics that a lot of the sexual metaphors that you get in metaphysics and in philosophy and many religions sort of makes you think, well, yeah, but why aren't they doing it? Like there's a whole lot of I mean, everybody's talking so much about, phallic metaphors that why isn't there some kind of like sexual act involved in the worship of something? And but the difference between and that's the Whoopdini, the great Whoopdini, which is a fantastic name, is pointing out in chat. There's a difference between sexual metaphor and sexual behavior and an institutionalized or ritualized sexual behavior.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So it's but that was one of the things I wanted to get out of the way at the launch of this, because it is sort of implied that there in Skyrim that there is some sort of a physical love in that there is some kind of a sexual interaction with Dibella worshippers in Skyrim, but they kind of avoid any really serious specifics. And I'm a little concerned that the whoever wrote those series of quests in Bethesda was just assuming that what they were reading in various ancient history sources was an accurate, portrayal. Unfortunately, it kind of turns out doesn't actually work like that. However, this being Elder Scrolls, there's about a billion different things that we can now talk about with Dibella that completely apply. For example, we were asked before we started to cover the concept of Dibella symbolizing the what was the term? Not lust. The dreams.
Dibella as the dream's libido.
Libido, yes. Fantastic. Thank you.
That was Felix. Which...
Yeah. And that's actually, from what I've been reading continuously about Gnostic concepts, and especially Crowley, that's sort of philosophy. Libido is, thank you, exactly, is a sort of kind of a code for the passion, or what we consider to be inspiration, and so again, depending on what religion or philosophy you're talking about, we're also straying dangerously close to the idea of obsession, and a single-minded or one-sided, unbalanced approach to life, which is something that the Dibella cult doesn't really stray into, I don't think. So the personification of libido, according to Crowley, would be very similar to, if you can imagine, when some people talk about their muse. Like artists will talk, like the stereotypical artist waxing on about how my muse has left me, I cannot produce. That is metaphysically similar to the concept that we're talking about here. The idea of inspiration and artistic inspiration that originates from a divine or external source is something that Crowley spent a lot of time, well, not a lot of time, but a healthy amount of time ranting about, to be blunt. And because, Crowley considered himself an artist, and he hung around with a lot of artists, and he was always being inundated with people trying to ask him, how do I, maintain this inspiration? Sometimes my ideas are shit, and sometimes they're great. How can I raise the percentage of great ideas and lower the percentage of shit ones? And that's a lot of Crowley's religion, or religious practices, I should say, were inspired by the idea of bringing in or accessing your libido and your inspiration and your muse. Because, as Crowley would put it, all true work is artistic. And all work is the right and true work is work that's done under the will of God. So,
yeah, I was gonna try and bring up the Greek muses, because
yes.
when you said inspiration, that that the associations with art and music and poetry and whatever like that, the muses are a very recurring thing, especially in Greek or Western European early cultures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yes, Houdini. Yes, we're talking about Aleister Crowley. His particular brand of Gnostic Christianity is a huge influence on Elder Scrolls. On Elder Scrolls metaphysics, and to a certain degree, the 36 Lessons of Vivek smacks a little bit of Aleister Crowley, but definitely the commentary on the Mysterium Xarxes reads like something right out of Aleister Crowley's commentaries. And so was it Greek muses or
that's where it all started.
Okay.
In terms of muses, I do find it kind of interesting that the original myth you're talking about talks about the sex and culture as kind of springing from the same thing. And Dibella has that kind of tension as well, because you've got that artistry and so on. You've got the expressions of culture and the expressions of sex all kind of bound together into one sort of package. Although for whatever reason, Dibella's cult seems to be a bit schismatic in that regard. You can go to what it says that some of Dibella's cults will focus explicitly on erotic stuff. Some will focus on artistry. Some will focus on cooking. Probably, I can't remember precisely what's in there.
It's
But
like Dionysian cults.
Ooh,
Say what?
It's like cults to Dionysus in Greek history.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Greek, the arts, like Greek plays, would usually begin with a prayer to one of the muses or Dionysus. The behavior of these Dibellan cults, bacchanalia, which, by the way, absolutely terrifying.
How so?
Imagine a roving pack of alcoholics with literally no inhibitions or pants.
We're getting into sanguine territory there.
Yes.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah. Well, sanguine feels like an almost direct lift from Dionysus, but you've got some elements from Dibella there, simply because there is so much variety in what her cults kind of offer. It does slightly annoy me that she gets pigeonholed into she's the goddess of sex the whole time, whereas you can get so much more in the way of expression and so on from that. From the kind of broad sweep of stuff that she covers, I was almost quite reminded of Slanesh, that Fulgrim was originally brought. Oh, for those of you following the bingo, this is a 40K.
Yeah, there's your Warhammer 40K.
Yeah, there you go.
But in the fall of Fulgrim that gets talked about in the Index Astartes, he originally gets seduced by Slanesh because the god offered perfection and the ability to follow something so well and so perfectly that you can create the best sword stroke, the best training, the best of everything. And I was thinking, is Dibella producing something similar? Because I mean, her artifact is not a dildo; it's a paintbrush.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up.
Well, I think ultimately, I mean, the differences between, because there are several deities in the Elder Scrolls that kind of encompass some variety of sex. I mean, we've got Mephala, we've got Sanguine, we've got Dibella, and this one I'm shady on. I mean, Molag Bal, if you can count. Yeah. I mean, it's but I think it's all about the attitudes that we look at the sex with, right? What lens are we using to look at this? Is it something that's, mirthful and maybe a little debauched and going crazy? Well, okay, well then we're getting into sanguine if we're talking about
credit or debit. Follow.
I was gonna say a little more tantric.
Okay.
It's, but then getting into Dibella, it's almost more wholesome. I feel that it's about relationships and about the feeling itself, and not necessarily ew, it's dirty penis and vagina. Like it's not quite that, right? Focusing too much on the nitty gritty and more on. I mean, it should be focusing more on the connection two or more people have together, right?
Oh well, there's an interesting thought.
Yeah, that's basically said in one of the Lawmaster's archives, that they say that it's not the quantity of love that's out there; it's the quality that Dibella's after.
Yeah. Well,
it is that relationship.
And sorry, go ahead.
It almost feels like, if you're looking at Dibella, Mephala, and Sanguine, that they're kind of a continuum of, on one end, you've got like the physical aspects of sex, and on the other side, you have the spiritual, intellectual, metaphysical, etc. And Dibella kind of sits in the middle.
Although I would also place Mara on that scale as well because she's motherhood.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
which is an interesting, like, well, I mean, hopefully, I mean, we could probably talk about this a little bit today, but we're just going to bring it up again when we get around to Mara. The differences between Dibella and Mara are not immediately obvious to the casual Elder Scrolls nerd. It looks a little samey. And it's actually one of the things that I mean, you can read Kirkbride talk about the divines critically on a couple of forum posts that he made back in the day, where he said that the idea of the divines being the pillars that create reality doesn't really hold up when you look into what they actually encompass, because you should be looking into things like elemental forces. You've got time and space covered with Akatosh and Lorcan respectively, but you don't really have anything similar in a lot of other places. You've got like Julianos, for example. Well, we'll get to. All right, I'm getting ahead of myself.
And Zenithar is possibly the worst example. I think that was one that he called out because
unless it's human nature.
Yeah.
I mean, could we call that a part of nature?
Yeah, the idea, there is a very lovely sort of feeling I get when I think about the idea of the 9 divines holding up are not necessarily the pillars of creation of reality, but rather the pillars of creation that allow mankind to exist, and then reality is formed as a byproduct. Ooh, in other words,
I'm feeling that.
Yeah.
So Min and Mer built the towers.
I'm sorry?
Min and Mer built the towers. The divines built Min and Mer.
Only after reality was stabilized, though. Right. The towers, apart from the divine two, don't actually hold up reality. Mm-hmm. But if we then, sorry, just complete tangent, but hey, this is the Selectives Lorecast.
Bingo.
Yeah. If you think about, but in terms of Man and Mer shaping reality, isn't that precisely what happened with the Elnathay Wars and Atmora, Aldmeris, and all that?
Sort of, except it's
fun and games.
One thing that people will like to bring up, well, okay, maybe just me, is that it's very hard to tell exactly where in the timeline the Elnathay Wars happened and for how long, and what happened before and after. And it sort of seems like, and this kind of goes back to my sort of dilating time theory, is the idea of the earliest age of Mundus was a period, it was very difficult to, it was when things were still getting themselves sorted out and everything was very wibbly wobbly, and you didn't really get a clean separation of events at the time. So during the Merethic Age and even before, it was very hard to tell. People would remember things as happening linearly, but they didn't necessarily. So how long did the Elnathay Wars last? It's hard to say. What happened during them? Who died? Who didn't?
Yeah, the events are pretty unclear. I think like the only thing I've ever found was the expulsion of the Mer side of it from Altmora, where they go south. And that's like it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I wanted to touch on one thing because you had brought up Mara. There was an old MK post and also some art about it with it was either at Morin or Nordic Pantheon related with Dibella, Mara, and Kine as a triple goddess.
Dibella, Mara, and
weird thing about that is Dibella being the maiden.
Yes, maiden mother crone.
The weird part about that, though, is the maiden is typically virgin. That's sort of the definition part of the maiden. Mm-hmm. So I've always had problems getting that to fit in my head.
Well,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say I don't think it quite fit, it doesn't exactly fit exactly, Also because the way that Kine is, but then again, Kine is only the crone because she's the widow. So it only fits if you squint. But
kind of sort of
pretty much everything.
why am I blanking? Greek goddess, warrior, goddess of wisdom. Why am I blanking on the name right now?
Well, the Roman would be
Hera,
Minerva.
or not Hera. Athene.
Athena. Kine's very Athena-y in Nordic culture to me.
Athena is an actual word, by the way.
Yeah, technical terms here.
Yeah.
Well, here's an alternate interpretation of why Dibella fits as the maid, because the maid does not have to be virgin. The maid is just unwed.
Yep. Or the maid is not yet a mother.
Yeah, which to many cultures were the same thing. I mean,
Exactly.
Being wed and being a virgin, I mean, those two things. I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of a traditional way that people have thought about it in various cultures.
Yeah, that's true. Well, the other thing is, though, in Shore, Son of Shore, Trinamac takes Dibella into the tent, and we kind of get this idea that he's going to have his way with her. But then at the end, it's specifically said that Trinamac didn't touch her.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the priests are good with the sex bit, but Dibella herself is actually virgin.
Hmm.
I don't know. That would be interesting.
Dibella as facilitator rather than participant. That's
your card, sir.
Hmm.
That feels like it works. Again, thinking back to the kind of the Elder Scrolls Online Lawmasters thing where they talk to one of the Dibellan Sibyls. It's a lot of the answers are, come to the temple, I'll discuss it with you.
Right.
And
which is
not
escapist.
It's not so much that, but it's the Sibyl is acting as an agony aunt.
Mm-hmm.
And matchmaker. She's not the one who's people are coming to the temple to screw and be done. She's sorting other people out, which maps onto that idea of Dibella as virginal facilitator quite nicely. But as much as I'm fairly sure that most Dibellan priests and priestesses wouldn't be virgins, simply because they'd have to have involvement in the cult before they had that role. And so probably got rather more involved than that sort of a role from the get-go allows.
Do we have anything in? Well, I'm
dead air.
Yeah, I know it's dead air, and I apologize for that. But I'm
both a hum and a dead air there.
I'm kind of parsing a lot of this because there's so. This is good.
Should we come back to it? Let it percolate for a minute.
Well, I think. I mean, part of the point of these casts is not to answer questions, but just to pose them. So I don't necessarily think we have to answer absolutely every single thing anybody needs to know about Dibella. But I do think that the only goal I had for this cast was to get people to watch it and then come away thinking, okay, Dibella's more than just, big titty goddess.
Boys.
Yeah.
Here's a question that I have that's probably fairly simple. Why are there so many statues of Dibella?
Yes.
And literally none of, most of the other 9 divines?
Yeah. Well, if I recall correctly, the statue of Dibella is a quest objective. You have to get one. Yeah. And at one point or another, an NPC hires you to steal one from the Dibella temple. But it is a rare drop from a loot table, so there's a possibility that you might already have one, and you can lie to the guy and say that that's where you got it. And that's apparently
my answer, but
that's apparently part of the quest option.
My main thought on that one is, well, if your cult has a monopoly on artists, then you're going to have more sculptures than everyone else.
I'm kind of kind of thinking along that line there, but I mean, I'm kind of of two minds here. One being that, I mean, if the temple is all about spreading art and inspiration, then it behooves them to spread their statues around so people are inspired. It's good for the population that they serve. But then, I can't remember what my other thought was. I don't remember. But no, there's the kind of game mechanics-y answer.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bit more, we have an agenda and here it is. Well, I mean, agenda makes it sound bad, but it's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, I know what you mean.
And oh yeah, and the third is like the great Houdini said, because titties. So
yeah.
I mean,
I just didn't want to touch on that one.
Yeah. I mean, you ever walk into like a nerd store somewhere, and they've got the little figurines of
behold
fan
the
service
of ample women with little clothing,
huge tracts of land. Yeah.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is there
funny signs? But anyway,
is there a relationship between the mania side of Sheogorath and artistry?
In
absolutely.
there was a lot of sort of casual parallels being drawn in the Shivering Isles expansion between Sheogorath and artists. And yes, Sheogorath takes credit for inventing music, which doesn't necessarily work because Dagothr was older than music, so probably Dagothr did, but whatever.
Unless you count the entire Arbus's music, but that's interesting.
There is explicitly one of the an example of Sheogorath and inspiration in the 16 Accords of Madness. It's Sheogorath and Vermina having a bet as to who can. Basically, I can't remember what the bet was. It was basically all I can think of is who can cripple this guy the worst, or make the best artist out of him or something.
What's the difference?
Yeah. And Vermina was basically sending him absolutely terrible dreams and really, really vivid dreams, and he was producing all this funky stuff. Sheogorath has a term with him. The dreams stop, and he basically gets utterly despairing, and his art takes a far darker turn. Eventually, he kills himself. And basically, all that Sheogorath did was take the dreams away. He didn't actually do anything to make the guy go mad, despite the fact that he did. So you've got a lot of claims about who is inspiring what artistic passion within the Elder Scrolls. It's not purely Dibella's realm by any stretch of the imagination, which kind of bugs me, to be honest, because being the kind of the underlying passion and drive of the Arabis is a really neat idea and a good place for Dibella, as far as I'm concerned. And makes me think an awful lot about Greek philosophy, which because there's a line from Plato that's basically that's something like the soul wants to fly back to the world of ideas on the wings of eros, which is erotic love explicitly. There's the idea that the same erotic drive is what's driving creative endeavors as everything else, which goes back to the pairing with culture and so on, which is possibly, now I'm thinking about it, why you don't get a consummation in the stuff you were talking about earlier, Chris, is that it's the desire and the drive itself that's the important thing, not getting it. Get satisfied.
The journey rather than the destination.
And that's one of the things that I like about when you're trying to differentiate between Dibella and Sheogorath for inspiration is, Dibella is the idea of, a controllable kind of inspiration, like, getting an idea and then you sit down and produce that idea. Sheogorath is the uncontrollable inspiration. It's, invasive thoughts. It's, I have to draw, diagrams on the wall with my own feces because I can't not do it. I can't stop myself. And that's kind of like the key difference is that Dibella is, I guess you could say Dibella is constructive, or at the very worst, self-gratifying creativity, whereas Sheogorath is like you said, sanity robbing, creation. It's just uncontrollable hell, It's creation that you want to stop. Yeah, Whoopdini, something like that. It's not necessarily that Dibella is masturbatory. It's just that Dibella is because I mean, from a metaphysical perspective, masturbation is not inspiration. It's just, or it's not constructive inspiration. It's just self-gratification. It's just it's pointless. It doesn't, nothing results in it.
Or even destructive if you want to go along the kind of wasting of essence. But yeah.
Well, but the idea is that, I mean, there were there's like there have been artists that I remember there was an artist in New Orleans when I was growing up who was getting a lot of media attention because he was mixing his paints with his own semen, and that's what he painted with. And they had an interview with him on in a magazine or as a newspaper article that I was reading, where the guy was going on, and because this is back when newspapers were a thing, and the guy was talking about how this was this is what people used to use before they used paints, is they would mix their own pigments with semen and then paint with that. And I remember even at a very young age thinking, no, I'm pretty sure that was egg whites. I pretty much spotted bullshit. Like, I don't even think I was 12, and I was like, no, that's horseshit.
Maybe he was making a pun with egg whites.
I don't know. I don't think he was. I think it was just kind of stupid. But well, he may not have been an idiot, but he was definitely very familiar with the ideas of self-promotion, because he was getting a lot of media attention.
I just have to react to Slovakian must look nice under UV light.
Yeah. So they had a.
I call this one a Jackson Pollock.
Yeah. And so part of the sort of like metaphysical impact, or the metaphysical difference between, just masturbation and then self-gratification for art is really whether or not other people are involved. And there is such a thing as and there is a context is important here too. So I mean, you could have, like, a person could sit down and paint a picture and then throw it and then destroy it immediately afterwards, and you could accuse them of artistic masturbation. But the counter argument to that would be, yeah, except that was practice. Like, I didn't like what, like I painted it and I'm done, and now I'm destroying it because I'm going to do it. I just did it to learn from it, and then I'm going to do it again. Or it's the Banksy approach. Yeah, sure. Well, but Banksy at least sold it before he destroyed it. See, that's why Banksy's brilliant. It's
proved it.
Yeah, he sold it and then he ruined it, and the value went up. Which is just, I fucking love that shit. Yeah, the sale was part of the art, exactly. It was great. I'm not a Banksy fan, but I'm a fan of that work. I thought that was really fun.
About the shredded one?
Yeah, the picture that shredded itself after it was sold. I thought that was really smart. Yeah.
It only half shredded itself.
It got most of the way down the photograph, or the picture. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're kind of claiming that Dibella is the muse in this sort of a situation, is any construction of art in that case something that's purely masturbatory and self-gratifying because you're doing it for the muse as well as with?
Well, if you do it's hard to say exactly. If you're doing it for, it depends on what the muse wants. One of the things that, if you take the Crowley approach to muse and inspiration, it's not. It doesn't really matter why you're doing it. It matters why your muse is having you do it. So if you understand that your inspiration is telling you to get something done, and you do it according to the wishes, to the will of your to the parameters of your will, then it's not masturbatory because you're doing something in the name or from the command of something else, in the service of your will. Yeah. But I mean, if depending on what you're doing, people are going to look at it and go, "Oh, you're just jerking off, man. That's nothing. that's crap," you know. And I mean, I myself have had songs that I've tried writing, or stories that I've tried writing that I will get partway through, and it will have taken like a turn of just self-indulgent. There's been more than a couple songs I've written that started getting very self-indulgent and very sort of like, oh, this is a good idea, I'm going to do this for a minute, or I think I could do that for another 8 bars, fuck it, nobody will mind. And then like somewhere around, you know, the point where somewhere around that point I go, well, who am I doing this for? Am I doing it for me? Because if I'm doing it for me, then what the fuck is the point, you know?
It's like the Maynardiest thing I've ever heard. It's like the Maynardiest thing I've ever heard.
Oh yeah. Maynard's got a lot of opinions about that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I have no idea what we're talking about.
Tool. Maynard is the lead singer of Tool, and he's a very interesting human being.
He's a very interesting farmer.
Once we start talking about music, I tend to check out. I know fucking nothing. I can't even read sheet music.
Well, neither can I. So.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, you see, as soon as you start involving complicated math and your time signatures, it might be time to stop.
It might, yeah. You might want to take a step back and think about what you're doing. Yeah. I mean, if what you're doing is stealing from Meshuggah, then join the club. Everybody else is too. But, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So, do your passion to make yourself happy, not other people? No, I don't think. I would actually disagree entirely with Boopdini. I think do your passion. If your passion only makes yourself happy, you're not doing it right. You're not doing the right thing. What's the difference between masturbation and self-actualization? Self-actualization does not involve the self, or does not involve the ego. Masturbation is entirely the ego. Self-actualization involves the self.
Oh, can I bring something in there that kind of trigger something? Again, going back to the Lawmaster's archive, the Sybil in that contrasts matters of the heart with matters of the mind, quite explicitly, in saying, well, the heart will give you one answer, the mind will give you another, and it's quite clear which one the Dibellans think is the most important. But it's kind of struck me that are they in essence, apart from just saying, "Oh, just go with the flow, go with what feels right," in some kind of quite hippie-ish way, maybe. But if it's being done, but if you think about the self as a rational thing, then you're in a sense losing yourself when you go to Dibella and so on. It's not, and there's also mention of dancing that happens in the temples and naked dancing and so on, and you look at some, I think it's in Reflections on Cult Worship, Dibella's cult gets described as charismatic.
Yes. Which
has a very, very specific meaning when you talk about religions. It's the idea about the personal experience of the divine, and that sort of thing. That's kind of not necessarily the goal, but one of the main features of the religion is that you have the personal relationship with, or the personal experience of the worshipper and the thing being worshipped, which makes me think that quite a lot of Dibellan stuff is about the journey rather than the destination. That it's that you're dancing, you're doing various things to totally lose the self, just be within the experience, which is possibly also something that to do with a connection with the self, with sex, not the self. Anyway, because there's I don't know what traditions explicitly say this or where it fits in, but there's the idea of sex as the little death, the place where you change, or you are no more you. and maybe that's kind of one of the the focus points of Dibella as well, in how she's worshipped. And again, with the art, it's the kind, again, we've talked about the losing yourself into the art. Maybe that's one of the goals of Dibella, rather than something that she keeps people away from. I don't know, but it's just something that occurred to me.
Yeah, that's actually something that I probably should have looked up if I had been thinking about it a little more analytically. I probably should have done some research into tantric sex, which sort of feels like the kind of thing you'd get in a more well-developed description of Dibella.
Yeah,
something losing your sense of self, that kind of thing. I'm not sure.
Well, it doesn't even have to be sex, because I mean, at least in Native American, in certain Native American cultures, the dance around the campfire goes until you're literally hallucinating from exhaustion.
Yeah,
Nordic chanting,
what you call it, the whirling dervishes.
Yes.
Yeah, which is where the whirling school gets its name from. Is another good example of exactly that kind of, dancing for religion. Yeah.
And in like Nordic tradition, you would cast spells by just chanting a thing over and over and over again until you started effectively running out of breath and hallucinating.
Yep. Which is, I mean, I will go on and on and on about metaphysics and religion and lots of spiritualism, but I was still raised by two scientists. So just when people start talking about why, the states that they reach during religious practices, I just immediately start thinking, yeah, that sounds a lot like a self-imposed hypnotic state brought about by manipulation of oxygen flow to the brain, and oh dear.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've made something boring. Oh, great. The theology of the movie Footloose. Thank you, Whoopdini. I was waiting for somebody to bring up Footloose. That's terrific. Yeah. So now this cast is now officially 1 degree of separation from Kevin Bacon. Congratulations. Yeah. Is there anything else that anybody wants to hit on? Because I really didn't think this is going to be a very long cast, and I would not be surprised if it was a quick one.
Kind of curious as to what people think about why Dibella is so universal. Along with Mara, she's one of the two that is pretty much a constant in the pantheons and isn't changed too much. I mean, Nordic Dibella is slightly different from Imperial Dibella. But the names are the same, and the entity is doing very, very similar things. So I'm just curious about how people think that the difference is and why.
I would say that at least part of it has to do with every culture to survive has to reproduce both its people and its culture, and that's kind of Dibella's shtick. So it's Dibella is so constant because every culture that's survived is one that has art and reproduction.
Yeah, but time is a constant as well, and Akka is one of the most screwed up gods there is.
Yeah, but that's just
as a counterpoint.
That's Akatosh. There's reasons.
Yep. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, you can blame that one on the monkeys.
Yeah.
Trying to remember what I put in my Red Because of Blood Oath. Yeah, I didn't really get my teeth into the Red Wise of Dagon on Sermon 5. Which is something that somebody's raising because it seems like the Red Wise of Dagon sound a little bit like a sacred prostitution cult, which I agree with. But there's something about the language and the phrasing that Kirkbride uses during that when he's discussing the Red Wise of Dagon and how they were who pay well for the wonders. He thought mainly of the red wise form of recompense, which was four-cornered and good wounded, a belly magic known nowhere else under the moons. He's talking about like like the sexual pleasures that he gets from the red wise of Dagon. Not necessarily. So what he's suggesting is that it might be possible that the red wise of Dagon pay in trade with sex. But if you were to ask me what it is specifically that makes them appealing to this guy, I strongly suspect that if there is a connection to Dagon, that means that the red wives of Dagon are probably really serious S&M dom, practitioners, I suspect that the merchant captain in question here was into some really, really serious S&M stuff. But as to whether or not this might be like, this could be another example of divine prostitution. It certainly sounds like it. But the difference here is that what we were suggesting with the Dibella cults and divine prostitution was that the sex act was part of worship. What I think that is being suggested in Sermon 5 is not that they are that is not that sex is part of the act of worship, but rather a compensation that they offer. So now, when we get into the Shonietta, I don't want to. No, forget it. Putting up my hands. There's a lot about the Shoni Edda that I do not want to comment on because it is very confusing to me. And in Redguard Morho
were they not priests of... Oh. Sorry, another thing's gone clunk and another bingo card.
Okay.
The way that Roman gets taught by someone by his wives in the Shonietta, and they are priestesses of Dibella, if I remember rightly.
I'm pretty sure.
It feels like Paul Atreides and the and the body control training. Bene Gesserit, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I said there's a bingo card incoming.
Is that bingo? Did we get a bingo?
I don't know.
Yes. The Bene Gesserit.
But having the priests of Dibella or priestesses of Dibella as the Bene Gesserit is not something I would associate with them at all. It's they're much more interested in genealogy than anything else. So why the link with Dibella here? Is it literally just, okay, this is how you ejaculate, here's the people to teach you how to do it? But it's, I don't know, that might be it. But was there anything else to that?
Oh, you're suggesting that... Oh, Slovakian's suggesting the Red Wives are priestesses of Dibella. Well, they're called the Red Wives of Dagon. I don't think... I mean, they're literally called the Red Wives of Dagon. I don't... that's a tough one.
But does that necessarily have to mean that they aren't the daughters of Dibella? Because that's ignoring... Because if we had, or if I was in charge of a cult like Dibella's, and we had a bunch of freaks, I would not want my name associated with that. So we're just going to say it from Dagon.
As a quick aside, it's being pointed out to me that maybe we should have gotten some women on this.
Yes. No, I think it's entirely appropriate for four guys to sit around and talk about, sex with women, and no, what? Where I don't see the problem. What's the problem? Let's face it, the biggest disadvantage this cast has always had is that it's almost always a sausage fest, okay?
Yeah.
So, no, I would, No, you ain't wrong. Yeah, your criticism is well founded and agreed with.
No, that was old D Bard in chat. He was He mentioned something to me.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, you ain't wrong.
difficulty is getting them into the things and getting people on. The scheduling is
is extremely
hard
wacky.
Enough time
yeah.
just getting us together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, to in no small way, every time one of these casts happened, it's kind of like the planets aligning. I mean, like it seems like really serious Elder Scroll nerds who want to get on a cast with other really serious Elder Scroll nerds and have a webcam and are willing to be on that webcam. And there are very few of those. Did we just stop off in the middle of a thought, or can we wrap this up?
Before we wrap this up,
yes,
I have to say Akavir so I can then say bingo.
Okay, there you go. Greg, congratulations to all our winners, and we'll see you at the everybody next time. Who are we doing next?
Julianos.
Wow, okay. He came up quick. Okay.
Next alphabetically.
Next one alphabetically. Yep.
Next
Fantastic.
alphabetically is Julianos, the guy with the Illuminati symbol.
Yeah.
So, prepare your tinfoil hats.
That's gonna be fun.
Okay, folks. Everybody, wave goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye now.